Well, thank you for being here this afternoon, Seth. First afternoon show.
You're very welcome. I'm glad I can make it.
And you look very nice.
Thank you very much.
Coming from one of your multiple gigs.
Yes, actually, this is, I am teaching classes at the Living Arts College right now. I'm a film professor, and I had class today, so came from there to here.
That's awesome. Are you guys meeting in person right now, or?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So how do they do that with social distancing and everything?
So everything is opened at a limited capacity, sort of like the restaurants.
Oh, okay.
So my class, I teach in the movie theater, and I have 4 students.
Wow. So very hands-on learning experience then.
There you go.
Well, that's pretty cool though. I mean, it's got to be nice for the students too to be back in school and not just doing the online thing, because I know after a certain amount of like online meetings even, I just am ready to
Absolutely
run away. So
Absolutely. And I'm sure there's some classes that the school's just not offering.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of people or the amount of involvement.
Yeah, because I would think those intro classes would be so hard because you need to have so many kids in the class, and then, to try to social distance them would be near impossible. So I can imagine those are probably still online, but
yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you're back and teaching. That's really cool. And then in addition to that, you're also moving and a DJ and a new husband.
That's right.
And congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
I know that's super relevant for a lot of the couples today, because weddings are not like they've ever been before.
Absolutely. It has been an experience, and I can't say that it is better or worse than anybody else's experience. But being married during a pandemic, as well as with all the social differences and the racial differences and things that are just kind of going on right now, it's a very unique time to be starting something.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And how has that affected you? Because I know that your wife now is white, you're black. Have you guys seen, I'm sure in the past you've had definitely been, I'm sure, discriminated against to some capacity, because I know my other friends that have told me stories about how they've dealt with that as a couple. So has that been impacting you hopefully more positively recently? Or what are you seeing in that? Yeah,
so there's 2 sides of it. For one, it doesn't super impact us because our circle of friends and the people that we immediately associate ourselves with are all supportive and all agree and have no problems with it. Or else they wouldn't be in our immediate circle of friends.
Right.
And with coronavirus, you can't really talk to anybody outside of your immediate circle of friends outside of social media, and then you could just block somebody if you don't like what they're saying.
Right.
So on one side of it, it's not actually anything that we thought about or even kind of, it had no effect on what our plans were to get married. But then on the back end of it, it's kind of, people have been encouraged by, or it's kind of unintentionally crossed some of those lines where it's been able to open up discussions that people have been able to have, even family members who you think you know what your family thinks one way or the other, or they just don't talk about it. And because it's so in your face right now, people are having discussions that they've never had before. So it's been kind of cool. Definitely, I know there's a lot of people who have a harder time with it than we do. And there's definitely been occasions in my life where I've been discriminated against and or things that she's not aware of that we'll have to deal with when they come. She's from, Washington State. And so just being West Coast and North, it's super different than it is here in the South.
Yeah.
And so there's just random little things like, hey, if we are driving to Florida and we stop to get gas and there's 4 pickup trucks and a Confederate flag, and I'm not going to hold your hand when we walk into the gas station to get something to drink. And it's not I don't love you. It's not I'm ashamed of you. It's like, hey, I want to make sure that we are safe. I want to make sure you're safe. I want to make sure I'm safe. I want to make sure whatever the situation is, that we're just not causing anything for any reason. And it sucks that you have to like think through that. But I mean, it's just kind of for now, it's part of life and the way things are and the way that I've always thought about things.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point about it, opening up the discussion. I mean, even a couple of weekends ago, I was down at the beach and I met a new couple, friends with the guy that I'm dating, and they were the sweetest couple. They've been married or together now, let's say 12, 14 years, something like that. She is white, he is black. And we were talking about everything that's going on. And she was telling me about what she's gone through. And it's little things like examples of, they'll be at the airport and they'll be like, ma'am, stop. You need to wait until he's through. And she's like, that's my husband. Yep. And they're like, oh, okay, like you can go. Or they have a daughter and she is obviously mixed, and some lady came up to her. I'm sure this was the same. I feel like probably the same trip. Came up to her again at the airport. Was like, "Ma'am, you need to get your daughter under control." And she's like, "My daughter is fine. Like, thank you." And she's like, "No, not that daughter. The other daughter." And they're talking about this random little white blonde girl. And she's like, I'll gladly help her, but that's not my daughter." Yep. So it's just like little things like that. But I wouldn't think of that because I haven't been in that situation.
Right.
But again, it's at least opening up the conversation so that more people are thinking about that, which it sucks that it happens to begin with, but hopefully it helps bring awareness.
And honestly, just kind of being on this topic, one of the things that I personally believe is that there needs to be a lot of grace, a lot of learning, a lot of openness on both sides. And even to the extent of when we do events, so with the company that I'm working with, we do events as a partner. Like there's a main person and then somebody helping doing something. It's not super common that we'll just send somebody out by themselves to handle something.
Right.
So oftentimes we'll go out and it could be my wedding and Ryan is helping me with the wedding, but he's white and I'm black and he's older. So like they think he's in charge. And I tend to think of it as in like, oh, okay, well, he presents himself as a person in charge. He's the older person. I'm running around doing this stuff while he's sitting there doing this, that, or the other. So I tend not to analyze it, but I could see how somebody would be like, oh, well, you just assume that he's the tall white guy, he's in charge, and the black guy is the one doing the work.
Right.
And I think there are a lot of situations like that happen where people will get upset and people get attitudes and different things. And for me, I just assume like, hey, you don't know any better. You don't know the situation. I haven't explained the situation to you. I'm not going to be offended by something as little as that. Yeah. Versus if somebody comes and, they're saying attacking things to me, then that's a different situation.
Definitely.
But just on something like that, I'm going to have grace with people. Like, they just don't know who's in charge. It doesn't really matter to me.
Right. And that happens too all the time. I mean, me and my partners, I mean, I'm the youngest one female. So like I'll have the same type of things happen to me. And you never try to assume the worst. But then there are times when, especially with everything going on, that we are seeing just outright hate. And that's not what we want. But I think that, hopefully this is shedding light, at least for people just to maybe just think twice. Yeah. And, I'm not going to even act like I know everything or understand everything that you've gone through as a person, nor has anybody understood everything that I've gone through just as a human. So just maybe people taking one extra second to like consider the other person's side of things, I think would already put us in a step in the right direction.
Yeah. We all come from someplace and it's a different place.
Yeah.
Nobody's experience is the same. So just remembering that and being like, I don't know where you came from. Let me take a moment to think about what I'm saying, to think about what you're saying, and just respond from maybe a different place.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And be positive. And, I know it's even aside from all of the things that are being brought to light, especially with COVID happening, it's already a difficult and stressful time with people not being able to work and they might have lost their job. So it's just something we have definitely never seen before, I think, as a society. So, but, to pivot to positive vibes, somebody who has dealt with planning a wedding, executing said wedding during COVID. How is that different than what you guys initially planned. I'm sure it decreased in size for one, but what else did you guys have to change, like when you were making adjustments to your day?
Absolutely. So I'm going to start from the beginning.
Sure.
And just kind of give you a story. And so, as I mentioned before, I work for Spin. We are a DJ and production company. And so being that I'm in the industry, it gives me a little bit of a different twist already. I work with cakes and flowers and DJs and photographers and videographers. Like, that's my group of friends. So I almost want to say I have a leg up in terms of planning a wedding, just because that's my job is the plannings of a wedding. Now within that, for my own personal wedding, like I said, at the time, my fiance, my now wife, is from Washington State. And so we were planning on doing a small, just kind of backyard at her mom's property in Washington, because her sister couldn't travel and her grandparents can't travel. So we were just going to go do a small ceremony there, come back, and then the following weekend do a huge reception here. Most of my friends are on the party end anyways, so they care but don't care about the ceremony and just want to have a big party. And once things started happening with coronavirus and people started having to shut stuff down, the twist, or I guess the foreshadowing maybe for myself, is that I was already seeing my clients do it, in the sense that, oh, hey, we were supposed to get married next week, but we can't because coronavirus. And, oh, hey, in 2 weeks we were supposed to get married, but now they're saying we probably can't get on an airplane. Or so it afforded me the opportunity to say, hey, we probably shouldn't and can't go to Washington, since apparently that's where it started, and we can't get on an airplane, and I don't want to drive across the country, and you know, things like that. And so it was, I guess, a blessing just kind of be able to see what my clients were doing, and to be able to even work through things with my clients and to let them know, hey, okay, if you have to drop the size of your wedding, I'll still cover you. Oh, okay, you need to postpone your wedding until next year. Cool, we're going to give you first dibs on these dates, or we'll let you move your deposit from here to wherever you're going to do. A few people ended up just straight up canceling. And that's unfortunate for them, unfortunate for us. And it just kind of depends on your lifestyle and what you're trying to do. On rather it's like, hey, we have a house and we were just getting married for the sake of getting married. Like, we can just bump that to another year. Or rather, they just went down to the courthouse and got married so that they could just have it done. Yeah. Or rather, they wanted to do something small and intimate when they were thinking, okay, we were going to have 400 people. Now it's going to be 10 of us. We don't need a DJ or a photographer or videographer, different things like that. Disclaimer, you do.
Definitely.
Yes. I don't care how small. And I honestly think the smaller ones are a little bit harder. You need a photographer. You want a videographer. And you really do want someone to run your sound. I love to put that plug in and say you need a DJ. You don't have to have a DJ, but you need a dedicated person in charge of your sound. And especially if you're going to be looking at broadcasting, which has become super popular.
Yep.
What I'm seeing a lot is people just turning on their phone and be doing like a Facebook Live. And there's so much more to it than that people don't think about. For one, Facebook still does copyright. So as soon as the groom walks down the aisle to that first song, your video sound gets cut out.
Really? Oh, I
you're
didn't know
missing
that.
a chunk of your wedding. You've got no one operating the sound or the video for that. So if somebody stands in the way, or if the people aren't framed up, like whoever's watching is just getting that odd view type thing. And some people are just like, you know what, at the end of the day, we're married, it doesn't matter. But for us, in doing the broadcast, one of the things that was actually a bonus, my wife's name is Jenna, and Jenna's got a grandmother in Alaska, and her best friend from college lives in Omaha. And the two of them probably were not going to be able to make it to the
Right.
physical wedding anyways. But because we did the broadcast, they were able to watch it live. We actually had 300 people watch our wedding live.
Wow.
And I would not have probably had 300 people at my wedding.
Right.
But it was just it was cool and encouraging to see that, like, hey, like, people actually care and want to see and are invested in my life and in what's going forward. And people were commenting and supporting and all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
So that was super cool. Backtracking a little bit to the wedding shower and to what we set up for Jenna. Maggie, her best friend, called me and said, hey, I want to do kind of a party for her. I need your help because it's digital. We can't be there. How can we set
Right.
this up? And we were able to actually set it up kind of like a Zoom call. And we took the TV out of the living room. And I set that up. I ran a webcam to it, set her up on a Zoom call, and had all of her friends or people who would have been bridesmaids. They all got Maggie take care of inviting all of those people.
Right.
And she said, hey, Seth, can you make sure there's a bottle of wine? Can you make sure there's these chocolates? Make sure there's these crackers. And they just played like random interactive games together
cool.
with Zoom and
Yeah.
the different apps that come with it. And I think there was like that headbands game or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Like they
I've seen
played
that.
that and they just like kind of it was like a 2-hour just like talking about old times and before coronavirus.
Right. But it's such a good option. And you've mentioned so many things in that, like even for these small events, I think that people definitely want to make sure they still have professionals there to capture the moments, because even if this is your smaller, let's just get married with the immediate family and then we'll have the bigger wedding later.
Yep.
I promise in 10 years, they're still going to want to be able to look back and see the pictures and the videos and have a DJ there to coordinate and run the whole show. Because
Absolutely.
I feel like a DJ is almost like wedding planner part 2.
Yep.
Because the wedding planner makes sure everything is where it's supposed to be and everybody's coordinated. But the DJ is the one who's putting the event on.
Yep.
So I think it's really important that they bring that. But what a fun idea to have the virtual bachelorette party and have all our friends get together and still do something, because I mean, even if I'm sure they still had so much fun, and
Oh, absolutely.
if they were all sitting in a room playing those games or virtual,
Yep.
I mean, there's not that much. I mean, I'm sure it's different, but it's better than not doing anything.
Correct.
So was Zoom how they put that on, or were they on live for those? Probably not for those.
So
right?
for the bachelorette, and for the wedding party, it was actually we did it through Zoom.
Okay.
So for the first one, it was just a private Zoom meeting for just her and her friends. And then what we did, the organizational part of it, was we sent out an email to all of the people that we would have invited to physically come to our wedding. And we
Gotcha.
said, hey, on this next Saturday, we're going to be doing a wedding shower. So our registry is on our website. Here's a link to the registry. If you'd like to get us a gift, go ahead and mail that to our house. We're not opening any of our packages until then. And so we had like 50, 60 packages show up at our house that we just
Wow.
all week shoved in a room. And then my mom actually came over and just took like a handful of them, like 15, 20 of them, her and her friend, and they just wrapped them like Christmas wrapping paper, wedding wrapping paper.
Wow, yeah.
And so then what we did was we set up in the living room on 2 different Zoom accounts, one for just us to be able to communicate and talk to everybody, and then another on a large TV that we set up so that we could see all 49 little boxes pop up,
Yeah.
and people could respond to us. And we sat there and we had strawberries and we had wine, we had chocolate, and we got our boxes and we had them all sitting around us, and we'd read a card and say, oh, okay, this is from Susan, and we'd open it up and we'd show them all and say, oh, Susan, thank you so much. We needed one of these. And then Susan would say, oh, you're welcome, this, that, and the other. But the super cool part of it that I think would not necessarily have happened had we not done it that way is that we actually got introductions, because I hadn't met Susan from college, or like her aunt who lives in Alaska, and different things like that. So when we opened a package and I say, this is from Susan, the person would chime in. They'd be like, hi, I'm Susan. I'm Jenna's aunt. Oh, you guys look so big. I know who all these people are now.
I love that.
It was super cool. And just the fact that people still sent stuff. People liked seeing their gifts opened and different things like that.
Your reaction
that was super cool.
to it, yeah.
They saw our reaction. We got to see their reaction. Some of them would spark stories. Like one of her cousins sent her this game, like Exploding Cats.
Oh, I've heard of that. I haven't played it yet.
It's a funny game, but like that's like a little inside joke between the two of them. Like her and her cousin have this like obsessive weird thing with cats going on.
Gotcha.
And so like then everyone else gets to peer into their relationship. Yeah. And so that was really cool to see. And then for the wedding itself now, Spin actually does and offers broadcasting.
Oh, cool.
And so I had Ryan come and run the sound and the music. One of the guys who helps us out, Logan, actually came and helped out as well. We have 3 different packages. We have a single camera broadcast package. We have a $700 3 camera package. And then we have a larger package that's going to involve, like, we bring out the videographer and they're on there and we can send it to other places and different things like that. But everything's coming into the computer. It's live, so we're broadcasting it out through private YouTube channel, and that can be forwarded onto either Facebook Live or Twitch or whatever platform you want it to be done. But it's great in the sense of it's not fully just out for the public. Like anybody can go on my Facebook page and they type in my name and they see whatever's happening. And so putting it through this process and going through YouTube and using OBS and having the company actually come out and do it, it sends out a link. And so what we were able to do was go on our website and just say, hey, there's going to be a link here. You click on the link and it's automatically going to open you an hour before we start. And anybody who has got invited to our wedding or who has our wedding website can go and see it. But random Joe Schmo or the random chick I dated in high school who's like, for some reason, creeping on my page can't just like start making comments and like doing stuff. And so like that was important to me, was to be like, hey, I want this to be my friends and my family and support. At the same time, not even necessarily a relationship, but just with what's all going on, kind of like you talked about. Like, I don't want some just random fool coming in talking about like, well, why are you doing this or these racial things or this or that or you should, like, that's
trolling
not
it,
right. Like, I want this to be a positive, just loving environment and time. And it was, and we were able to do that. The other thing with it is the same as we do with Facebook Live or Instagram Live. It records it right there also. So you can still go on my website and see it. And it like went straight to my phone and I have the file. And then I was able to send that to the videographer who's going to like chop it up and put it in with what they've recorded also. We had 3 different camera angles, one of which was a close up of the altar where we're standing from behind the officiant, which is like,
so you can see all the guests and stuff.
Like you have a close up of our face and then you can see all the guests. And that's something that like the videographer is not necessarily going to get unless they go stand next to the officiant,
which they're not going to do. Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
And so like it affords us angles and things that you would get in a movie, but not necessarily in a live event. Yeah,
that's really cool. And I think that I totally agree with you. I'm somebody who's very private in my personal life. So the fact that you're able to go ahead and make it so that it's basically invite only, and you can, because weddings are intimate, like they're celebration of love, it's your friends and family. You don't want, at least I wouldn't want random people on the internet, even if they weren't trolling it and saying anything negative, I just wouldn't want them watching it because I'd be like, this is weird. But then I feel like even after COVID, which hopefully ends soon,
Yep.
I still feel like the virtual aspect to weddings will continue on.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, even the idea of opening gifts and having that be virtual, I didn't even think about that. I mean, how nice is it for your guests to be able to communicate with you like they're sitting with you, opening the gifts with you? I mean, that's such a cool component that I don't think anybody really thinks about, but it's something that we can kind of take this negative COVID times and pull something positive out of it. So very cool.
And none of these are my own ideas.
Well, we can credit you because I never heard of them before.
I'll take the credit for it. Yeah, that's fine. But also in giving credit, like that one in particular, I took my sister and a group of women that go to the church that I go to. Somebody had a baby, and so they had a virtual baby shower. And that was how, like, in the middle of COVID, you're not supposed to leave your house. People were still able to support her and help her by saying, hey, we're going to jump on Zoom. One of the people went to her house and took a bunch of presents and said, hey, we're going to open all these baby shower gifts on Zoom so people can see. We're all going to, whoever has wine in their house, just go get a glass of wine and we're all going to drink wine and open these presents. Like, kind of thing like that. And that's kind of how the idea got formulated. The broadcasting that we did for the actual wedding and the service that we provide, we actually, about a year ago, had a client who the bride's grandfather built a church, and the church only holds like 70 people because it's from like back in the day.
Yeah.
And they are affluential people. And so it was like, oh, okay, well, they invited their friends and then people from work and then people who like are a part of this program that they're a part of. And so it ended up being like 250, 300 people that needed to be at this event. And so what we figured out at that time, and then one of the services we started offering is called a sip and stream. And so what we did was we put immediate family in the church, and we've got 3 camera setup going in there. We're broadcasting and run fiber 3 football fields away to a venue that's down the road. And we set up the 80-inch TVs.
80 feet would be huge.
Yeah, that would be huge. So we've got 2 80-inch TVs, and that's broadcasting directly what's happening in the church. And so you've got the catering staff walking around with glasses of champagne.
Nice.
And if somebody has kids or if somebody's not like immediate family, they're at this venue sitting out in a garden, sipping on champagne, watching this wedding happen, and then the immediate family comes over to the venue and joins for cocktail hour, and then they go into their reception after that.
Yeah.
And so like that concept and that idea, it's the same thing that they do for like music award shows or anything. Is like they're out on the red carpet and then you go back inside. And so we're able to take all these productions and adapt them to weddings.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, like, a wedding is a production.
Oh, definitely.
And so it's been really cool to see the evolve and the changes. I feel like all of these things have existed and people are just now tapping into them because they're forced to.
Yep.
But it's like people were doing the Zoom calls and the Skype calls and even in just day-to-day business and meeting with clients. Like now I'm like, hey, let's, I'll just Skype you and we'll go over your music and we'll talk about what you're looking for in your wedding. We'll talk about, do you need lights? Do you need gobos? Are you looking for, a photo booth? Like, what is it that you're looking for your wedding? And I'm doing all this stuff in a 30, 45 minute Skype or Zoom meeting. I'm like, why did I ever go to the office? Like, this is just fine.
Yep.
And I think the world is going to kind of like make a shift. It's like all these companies are realizing like, wait, our staff is functioning working from home. Like,
right.
We could cut the cost of a building out.
Exactly. And plus, I think a lot of people like the flexibility.
Right.
It might be different if you have a lot of small children, because maybe it's more distracting at that point. But I, for one, love the idea of not having to get fully dressed and go into an office every day. So I think a lot of corporations are going to have a problem getting their employees to come back full time.
Absolutely.
Like, because who would want to? And I think about all the time I wasted getting dressed in the morning and doing my hair and makeup. And now I'm just like throwing my hair up and no makeup and turn on the Zoom call. And it's just as good and I don't even care anymore. So
Yep.
it's like, but it's time that I can be more productive too.
Absolutely.
So, and we're getting the same amount of work done. And if you're able to communicate with a couple over Zoom,
Yep.
you're still able to get that personal connection with them
Absolutely.
that you need for a DJ, because I know we talked about how important the connection is for couples and the DJ that they're working with, more so than I think really any other category.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's no backlash on that,
No,
but it's
no.
true. Like
I
I think that's so important, that connection.
Absolutely. And I can even shine a little bit of light on that. And I guess we'll kind of transition into the DJ aspect of what we're doing here. So I would 100% say your DJ is your make or break for your entirety of your wedding. And I'm going to explain it in two parts with the ceremony and the reception. Okay. So the reason that we don't just market ourselves as a DJ company is because we do productions, we do AV. So screens, projectors, lighting, DJ is just a part of that.
Right.
It's a very important part of that, but you don't need a DJ for your ceremony.
Right.
You need a professional to be able to run your microphones you need a microphone on your officiant. You want a microphone on your groom so you can hear what's being said. You don't want just two speakers at the front of the room where everybody in the front is getting blasted out and the people in the back can't hear. Mm-hmm. You want somebody who's going to space out your speakers, do your delays, and you're going to have nice even sound throughout. You're going to be looking at your lighting and different things like that. Okay, if this is a dark room, what kind of, are we doing mood lighting? Are we doing pretty lighting with market lights and chandeliers? Or are we doing party lighting where we have up lights and movers and different effects and different things like that going on? So it's definitely much more expansive than just DJing.
Right.
And we'll get some pictures in here to show people some of the different setups and different things like that we've done.
Right.
But then kind of what you were mentioning earlier, when you've got your wedding planner, which please get a wedding planner. Plug for wedding planners.
Right.
I need you to have a wedding planner.
I think you said that the first day we met too.
My
You were like, I won't work
goodness,
a gig if there's not a wedding
if
planner.
there's not a wedding planner, and I prefer it to be a professional wedding planner. I'm fine with like a day of wedding planner or somebody who's new, but there needs to be somebody designated to take care of the things. And that's what the wedding planner does. The wedding planner takes care of the things, meaning, oh, you forgot something, or, do we have enough? And kind of the wedding planner / caterer is going to be like, do we have enough napkins and forks, and are the chairs places, and all this kind of stuff that they're concerned about. And then my portion as the DJ is I'm concerned about the people for the fun atmosphere. Like, I'm not concerned about, is there enough chairs? I'm concerned about like what songs are coming in, what's the mood of the room, what's the vibe, what's the energy.
Right.
And so that's what I'm going to see. And so during our meeting, we would sit down and we would talk about what's important to you. I say, hey, okay, we've gone through this music list and talked about different things. There's 50 songs on this list. Is it more important to you that you hear all 50 of these songs, or that I keep people on the dance floor? Because this song that you picked, amazing song. Lil Yachty, go for it. But that's not the best dancing song.
Yeah.
And, if I put that on and it clears the dance floor, like, can I skip it? Or do you just want me to play? Like, do you want to hear it through? And it's stuff that brides and grooms don't think about necessarily. Like, that's not their job.
Right.
That's my job, to be able to read the room and to be able to read the atmosphere and what people are wanting. And I get people on both sides. With Spin, with our company, it is Ryan owns the company, and then myself and Patrick, the three of us are the wedding DJs. And we have three very distinct personalities, and we get three very different types of brides. And if you're a Ryan bride, you don't go with Seth.
Right.
And if you're a Seth bride, you don't go with Patrick, or you don't go with Ryan. And it's based off of personalities. One of the things that it's important to do as a bride or a groom, but slightly irritates me, is when people do the comparison where they like tell you up front, they're like, okay, well, I'm going to interview 6 DJs. Why should I pick you instead of them? And I've had people do that.
Yeah, not the way to start off the conversation.
And for me, I say, okay, well, I want you to go with whoever fits your personality. Like, I hate saying it, but like ultimately the DJ is going to play the music that you want to hear. Like if they're a good DJ, they're playing what you're telling me what your first dance is. You're telling me what you're dancing with your dad. You're dancing with your mom. You're telling me don't play any line dances or play all the line. Like I have some leeway in between the filler. That's part of my job, but I'm also doing what you've told me to do and I'm just orchestrating it.
Right.
Okay. So if I have a company and this guy has a company and this girl has a company and we're all running the same speakers. We're all running the same microphones. We're all going to be there for 4 hours. We're all playing the list that you told us to play. Like the difference is personality. Like, do you like me and feel that I'm going to be able to communicate to your guest the best version of you? Because this is not my party. Right. It's not your guest party. It's your party. So when your guests and your family and your friends come to this, they should be able to come in, have fun, and leave and be like, you know what? That felt like the couple. Yeah,
definitely. And I think that that's so important. And the DJ is probably different than any other category that they're booking where they... And I get it. I've talked to so many brides and they're going through and they're answering the same questions a whole bunch of times.
It's a checklist.
Right. But to your point, it's like most DJs will all have, to an extent, the same equipment and they'll be able to offer a similar service of playing the songs that you're telling me to play. But again, if I think about what my wedding will probably look like versus what my brother's wedding will probably look like.
Drastically different.
Night and day.
Yep.
Night and day, because we are night and day personalities.
Absolutely.
So, and it's not that one is better than the other. They're just different. So there's no way that I would go to him and say, hey, you should use the DJ that I use because I promise it wouldn't be the same fit.
And honestly, in personality from us talking and me knowing you, I would say you would be one of Ryan's brides.
Really?
Okay. And with Ryan's personality, the brides that he gets, Ryan is a vision person.
Okay.
He's going to talk to you about what is your vision for this? Like, okay, we want when you enter the room, the lights to be on you and you're walking down and it should feel like you're a princess and, you know, your gown's going to be flowing and we want the clouds to come. Like he goes through and talks to you about what is it that you're envisioning. And he puts all the pieces together that will equal what your vision is.
Right.
Because you're not in the industry. You don't know what it is. You just know that you want to walk out on clouds while the magical music is going and like it's Disney.
Right.
Okay. He knows all the stuff that's needed to make that happen.
Exactly.
But you don't know and nor necessarily care what all that stuff is as long as your vision is there. Whereas I'm a little less of a vision and a little bit more of I'm a party like DJ. Like if you're just like, hey, I'm laid back, I'm chill, like I just want to have a good time. I just want to have a party. I want to know that things are going to get done. I want them to be done well and I'm not really worried about stuff. I just want you to handle it.
Yeah.
Like that's how most of my brides are. Most of my brides are like half the songs they're just like, "Oh, play whatever you feel is appropriate." Like, "Oh, we needed a song for cutting the cake." Well, just play whatever you think is good.
Right.
And none of Ryan's brides like have here is what you will play.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with either one of those, but that's that personality trait difference.
Yeah.
The way that I announce in the bride and groom and the bridal party versus the way that he announces them in, that's going to be different. Some people will get out and do the dances, like they'll put on the cha-cha slide and they'll go out there and they'll be dancing with it and they'll make jokes and have fun with you. Other DJs just strictly stay behind the booth and they care about the music. And they're like, I don't talk. One of the guys who used to DJ with me, by far one of the best DJs in Durham that I think the last 10 years. He doesn't like people, like in terms of talking to people. Like,
really?
Like he's about music and he will kill it. The party is so amazing. But like, don't come up to him in the middle of the set and say, play this song next. Like he's completely lost his train of thought. Like, why are you talking to me? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so in situations like that, like you might need a MC and a DJ. We've got a DJ who works with us who came from California, amazing DJ, does amazing things, but same thing. Like, he doesn't really like people telling him what to do, in the sense of, like, if I'm doing this party and I'm reading the crowd and I see the direction it goes, you coming up to me and asking me like, hey, can you play this slow song right now? Like, that's not the direction we were headed.
Yeah.
And you've just killed everything I built up. And he doesn't like that. So for him, he'd rather do, you know, pool parties and mitzvahs and, you know, more of your just like fun party.
Right.
Rather than your structured, you know, and we bring him in for like corporate, for like New Year's and Christmas parties and all, and he does amazing. And I would even say, like, for our company, I kind of think the rankings are backwards. I think that we have the strongest speakers all the way down, and then the strongest musician all the way down, and they're flopped. And so, like, I'm one of the middle people. Like, I'm a good DJ and I'm a good talker, but like, I started off in weddings and then transitioned into clubs and parties from there, versus some of our other guys started off in clubs, so they're crazy good on music, and then they've transitioned into the weddings, and so that's what they've had to work on. Or you've got like Ryan doing like corporate stuff, and he like teaches classes and does all kinds of things, so like that's what he brings into it, is a very structured, like, hey, this is the time for this. I'm going to keep you guys on track. We're going to have fun. If the crowd's not feeling this, I'm going to come to you and say, hey, look, the crowd is coming up. Can I go off? Can I stay? Like,
right.
He's going to talk you through it in that terms. So there's just all kinds of DJs, none necessarily better than the other. It's on, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
And that's part of that. That's why that question is a little hard to answer, of like, why should I pick you versus somebody else? I'm like, if you like that guy and you think he fits your crowd better, pick that guy. And I know that's kind of a weird concept as the vendor side, like, you don't want to turn people away, but like, if you don't want me to be your DJ, if I don't fit your group, I don't want to do it, like, because you're not going to be happy,
right?
And I'm not going to be happy, and I'm going to be stressed out the whole time wondering if this is what you want. And then you're going to be like, well, he's not having fun. Like,
yeah.
So it's just kind of one of those things. Like, I can't do all the weddings. I don't want to do all the weddings. I just want the weddings that fit me and my personality.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where, like, especially with all the stuff with COVID going on, the weddings that have continued on and didn't cancel, and like that are using us still, and like the people that I already had booked and they're still going with me, like, I have so much fun at their weddings. I just did a wedding at Pavilion Carriage Farms.
Oh, cool.
Love Pavilion Carriage Farms. And it was a smaller wedding than they anticipated it being because of all the rules and the different things, but I had so much fun with them. And it was one of those things where, like, Ryan had come out and helped me with some lighting, because they got sound and DJ and lighting, different packages. And so he came out, helped me set up some lighting, stayed for the beginning part of it. And like, I did something differently than he would have done it. And he was like, are you sure that they want that thing? And we checked with them and they were like, oh yeah, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, okay, cool. This is your bride. Like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I'll be back for breakdown, kind of thing like that. Versus like, and I think one of the things was like, when I announced them in, I just did first names. And like, most of his brides are like more formal. So like, they're like, no, it's this person, first name and last name, escorting this person, first name and last name. Or, and I was just like, ladies and gentlemen, it's John and Sandy.
Yeah.
And we have this person. And like, it was kind of like, kind of like that. But like, that was their personality of that couple. And they loved it. And they were just like, oh yeah, just play the song. And they didn't even want a different song for them. They wanted like the song just to continue. And when they came in, just turn it louder. And they just kind of like wanted to party in.
Right. That's fun though. Yeah.
Right. And so it's like about customizing what's good for that client. Now, on the opposite side of the same coin, you have to be a professional. I know we talked about a little bit before, just like horror stories and different things. And like, I have heard stories. I have not been in these situations necessarily, but where like a DJ will show up and start setting up, and they'll be like, oh, hey, come have a drink with us, or hey, come smoke with us, or hey, do what, whatever.
Right.
And then time for the wedding comes and like they don't do what they need to do, or like they've played this song, but like that was a song from the wedding they did yesterday, or something like so you want to have fun and like be personable and hang out with them and become part of their family and their friends, but you still got to be professional. Like you have a job to do.
Right.
You need to get the job done. One of the things for us is like during a wedding, during a corporate, like unless there's been like a pre-approved reason, like, oh, we're personal friends of this person, or like, oh, we do stuff for this person, and that like we don't let our DJs drink. And a lot of venues just do that. They're like, hey, like you can't get something to drink while you're on the job. You wouldn't drink while you're doing some other job.
Right.
Kind of thing like that.
Minus the podcast, but
well, I mean, we won't call this a job as much as like amazing funness.
Exactly.
But there's things like that people don't consider as like, they're like, oh, I'm a DJ. Like when I go to the club, I get my drink, I play my music, I do this thing. And it's like, well, okay, now it's time. Like you need to focus. Like you need to keep track of the time. You need to keep track of the order of things. Like, no, don't go talk to that bridesmaid. No, you can't do like it's work time.
Yeah.
And you do want somebody who's going to be able to do that, but still blend. Because if everybody in your group is like super chill, super fun, you want somebody who's like straight rigid either.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's a balancing act. And you've got to find where that fits. I guess other kind of, not necessarily like horror stories, but just kind of some of the things that we have come to learn over the years, and that brides and grooms don't think about, and that we didn't necessarily know until it happened to have to be able to deal with it. But a lot of Patrick gets a lot of outdoor weddings, and he'll get like something that's happening like in a field, or at a barn, or this or that, and like it looks real pretty. And if it's not an actual wedding venue, like a lot of times the couple don't think like, is there power at the barn, or like we're getting married under a tree in a field. Like the DJ doesn't normally bring 400 feet of power. Like that's just not in our regular. So like we need to know that. Now part of that's on us. Like when we hear that like, oh, okay, it's going to be outside in a field. Like we should ask like, hey, are we going to be within 20 feet of a power source? What's going on? If not, like I need you to get a generator, or I need you to provide certain grade of power cables for us. Different things like that. Same thing as like with a videographer, like if they're using drones or different things like that, like, okay, where am I at downtown? Like, am I allowed to fly here? Am I close to an airport? Am I
right? The things you need to think through.
Right. And that's all stuff that's like, it's on us, but also like those are questions that if you're getting married, you want to ask. Right. Like, hey, I saw a video of my friend's wedding and they had drone, and we want drone footage, but we're getting married at Glass Box. Like,
probably not gonna
that
happen.
Doesn't like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And so either you've got to change your venue, or you've got to sit down and talk to your videographer and say, hey, what is another way we can get this effect or a similar effect, since we can't have these things?
An actual drone.
Right.
Right.
And that's where your horror stories come in, is when people don't do those checks. Or you're doing something at a house or a place that's not zoned for something, and like as DJs, like we're too loud. And like,
right.
I've been to events, thankfully not weddings, but like birthday parties and different things where like the cops have showed up and like been like, hey, you guys got to shut it down.
Yeah.
And it sucks. It's embarrassing for the people, but even also like as a DJ, as a person, like that sucks. Like we were having fun, we were having a party, and like they're just doing their job. They don't mean anything by it, but like you gotta follow the rules.
Right.
I would say knowing your times for your venue is something that I go over with my brides and my grooms. Okay, so you're gonna do a 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Okay, how soon can I get in and do my setup. Like, can I come in at 9 that morning, or are they only going to give me the hour before? Because depending on what package we've gotten, depending on what equipment we're doing, I need more time than that. Okay, you end at 12. Is the venue okay with me just breaking down however long it takes me to break down? Or is the venue going to say like, hey, you have 1 hour to get out, in which case we really need to cut the wedding at 11 or 11:30 so that I have that hour to clean up and get out, kind of thing like that. So stuff like that is going to be important to know. One of my favorite things that I've never had a problem with is you get fed very well at weddings.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like making a movie or doing anything else. Like, feed the people who are working.
Yeah.
Like, they will love you for it. Doesn't even have to be anything. Like, I've had some places where they're just like, oh, here's a sandwich and an apple. And I've had some places they're like, oh, just get in line, go, like, kind of thing. And it makes a difference. Like, it helps. You're part of the group, you're part of the family, you're commingling with them. But a lot of times the brides and grooms will ask you, they'll say, hey, okay, we're having a catered meal, we're doing number of plates. Like, do you guys, like, who needs a plate? How many people are you bringing with you? So like something like that's important to know or important to ask when you're talking to your DJ. For us, we deal with attire and color as well. So, okay, does the DJ need to wear a tux? Are we wearing suit and tie? Or is this business casual? For us, we don't do anything lower than that. Okay. And sometimes people will say, oh, we're all going to be in jeans and cowboy boots. That's cool. I'm still going to be wearing like...
At least business casual.
Business casual, upper business casual.
Gotcha.
Just because that's our brand standard. But that's something to know is that like, oh, okay, this wedding is in June outside. I don't need to show up in a 3-piece tux.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be brutal.
Right. Right.
Especially in North Carolina.
Exactly. So knowing like your environment, where you're going to be, knowing the rules, knowing all of that stuff is just going to help make the experience better for the couple, better for the bride and the groom.
Yeah. I think that's so important too, because, and that's what I'm really hoping comes out of the podcast is that couples realize that even though they are technically the one in charge, they're the one writing the check at the end of the day and it's their event. On the same token, I like to think of it like if you're buying a car, you're not just going to go and buy the first car you see. You're going to do a ton of research on it. You're going to look into all the different options and really understand what you're buying before you purchase it. I mean, there are things that I'm even thinking that I never thought of before. Like, I know when I get married, I'm going to have to tell my DJ, hey, listen, we're going to have to do all the like formal stuff up front. And then the second you see me take one shot of tequila, anything I tell you, just ignore.
There you go.
Because I'll be telling you to play every terrible song that I can think of. And I just want you to just ignore me.
Exactly.
So it's like, those are the types of things that you can't just say, oh, we're not going to, I mean, usually you want to listen to the bride.
Right.
But I'm going to be like, no, shut that down. Like, shut down that train
but
right before it gets there. Yeah.
You know yourself.
But people need to, I think, look at themselves and be true and say, okay, well, I know what I'm looking for. This is the vibe I'm going for. And in order to make that happen, these are the things that I need. Rather than just asking the DJ, why you?
Right.
It's more like, no, why me? And is that something that we vibe on, or you have the same thought track behind? Because if not, I mean, if I had somebody who was just like going to do everything I said, I mean, it would be a disaster. We'd be changing the song every 30 seconds and, it would just be, everybody would be on the floor passed out drunk, I think. So don't listen to me.
but part of that is, and that's why it's so important, like why we have these meetings. Right. And that's why we came into the office, or that's why we do the Skype or the Zoom. And I've been at, the Forever Bridal shows. I love the Forever Bridal shows. And I want to say like 2 or 3 years ago, I guess it was 2 years ago now, I did one of their shows, and a bride came and said something to me that just kind of like was like, I get it, but like I don't get it. And like it was like we were like passing out some information and doing some stuff, and the bride was like, oh, well, I only use Instagram. And I was like, you won't call or have an email or anything? And she's like, no, I just use Instagram. And it's like,
interesting.
Right. And like, I understand like the generational differences between things. And like right now, like we're doing tons of stuff on like Instagram and TikTok, and like Facebook is sturdy and reliable. I find it odd when people are like, oh, I use the Snapchat. And I'm like, that's not what Snapchat's for.
Yeah. I still don't get TikTok either, but maybe you can help me with that.
Right.
I don't get it at all.
And like, and I'm all about communicating with people in the platform that they communicate.
Yeah.
But at some point in time, if you want me to do your wedding, like you should know who I am.
Yeah.
Like you should see my face and we should have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, that's why that meeting is so important. And I know a lot of times it's inconvenient. Like I get people all the time who are like, oh, well, I'm in Fayetteville and I just don't have time to drive over there. Like, I know, but you got to jump on Zoom. You got to jump on Skype with me. Like, I can't do your wedding if I can't talk to you.
Yeah, we have to do something here.
Right.
And that's what I know from Bride Genie's perspective, we're trying to push that messaging as well. It doesn't matter what category. I mean,
Exactly.
You're filling out the information for a service request so that you don't have to answer the basic questions 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Now you have all these quotes from DJs, let's say. You're not going to be able to book them and sign a contract without meeting them, or at least to your point, having the Zoom call or
Right.
whatever. It's more like that initial matching and meeting and getting you to, okay, these are my top amount, 10, 5, whatever.
Yep.
But even if it's a photographer, a DJ, a venue, I mean, you need to go and look at them. And
Oh, absolutely.
it's like, again, going back to how much you're spending on this event, it's like it's worth your time.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't want to book somebody and then you just have nothing in common with them and the vibe is completely off, and now you're like, well, I didn't have any fun at my wedding because the DJ didn't listen to me, none of the songs were what I wanted, and it was just like my brother's wedding.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, honestly, that's where all your horror stories come from.
Right.
I for one summer many years ago, I worked for one of those like website companies where like you go on and you're just like, oh, I need a wedding DJ in Charlotte, and they're like, oh, you can have a DJ for $500 or $300, you know, one of those kind of companies. And literally, I found them, like I started working for the company because I found a random ad on Craigslist, and I was like, oh, I'm not doing anything this weekend, I'll make an extra $300.
Right.
But like that's how they ran the company. Like, and so I did a whole season, I want to say 15 weddings.
Wow.
Where I didn't meet the bride until I showed up and set up to start doing. And it's like, I'm not okay with that. Like, I hope the bride didn't know that that's what's happening, but like, I can't imagine how you can respond to that. And they were filling out, you know, Bride Genie is much more put together.
Thank you.
Forms and things than this company was.
Yeah.
But this company had like a page where it's like, oh, you fill out these generic things and then we'll send you a DJ.
Yeah.
And so like I knew what song they wanted for their first dance. I knew what song they wanted for this. But like I had no phone number. I had no way to communicate.
That's
like,
insane.
Right. And so like I'm showing up hoping that there's going to be I'm getting paid either way, but like hoping that this bride enjoys what I do and that she gave me the correct information, and they're hoping that I actually show up. And
right, like there's so many variables that could go wrong in that situation. So I personally wouldn't feel comfortable with it. But again, if you've never booked an event of this scale or never had to hire professionals for an event, all your parties were just, which there's nothing wrong with. I mean, I haven't put on a wedding scale event before, but being in the industry now, I'm enlightened to all of these facts. But if you didn't know, you wouldn't really think, does the personality of the DJ matter to the extent that it actually does?
Right.
So I can definitely see that disconnect, but that would be interesting. I mean, before we were talking, a cake song, I didn't even think of that. Like, I'm in the wedding industry and I didn't even think, oh yeah, there's got to be music playing when you're cutting the cake, or that's going to be super weird.
It's people, and the reason you don't think about it because you're like, oh, I'm cutting my cake, but no, it is a 5 to 10 minute period of time where everyone in the room is staring at you trying to cut a cake. And you can't just cut it and go, because we need a picture, then we need the videographer, then you both need to hold it, then we need to plate it, then we have to feed it. And like, that's super awkward.
Yeah.
Like where no one has anything to do but stare at you eat a piece of cake.
That sounds like my nightmare. And I probably don't think of it because I've never remembered that long into a wedding that I've attended.
Well, there you go. But it doesn't have to be. It could be easily spiced up and made fun by, you know, or it can be made intimate and sweet by, like, you know, how sweet it is to be loved by you, or sugar, sugar, or cake by the ocean, or, you know, whatever you want to do to spice it up. And then your guests are like paying attention, but kind of not paying attention. And it's like themed and different things like that.
Right.
And so you have fun with it. You got to think about, okay, are we going to do a bouquet and a garter? Most people think about those things, but okay, with our garter, you have to remove it and then toss it. So I need 2 songs.
Right. It's not just throwing it behind you.
Right. So like, where did this garter come from? So now we need to talk about, okay, your group and your parents, your grandparents, who's going to be there. What is the appropriateness level of what's happening?
Yeah.
Are we just taking this off and throwing it and there's kids in the background? So I'm playing like Who Let the Dogs Out? Or am I like Magic Mike in this and like you're about to like pony and like make a whole big thing?
Yeah.
And just communicating even the little oddities. I've got a wedding coming up where the bride told me, she said, hey, there's this guy who's coming to the wedding. He's in our wedding party. He does this thing. I don't really like it, but he's done it at every wedding. I know he's not going to just not do it because I told him not to. And I was like, all right, that sounds a little weird. He was like, every single one of our friends who gets married, he makes the bride and the bride's mom sit in a chair in the middle and he like gives them a lap dance. He thinks it's hilarious. And she's like, he gets drunk and like he just does it and there's like no stopping it. I'm like, cool. Now that I know about it, I can control it. So what I'm going to do is when we do the the bouquet, I'm going to have him throw the bouquet. Then when we do the garter, I'm just going to call him up there. We're going to put the chairs down. You and your mom are going to sit down. We're going to have him go out there. I'm going to put on the song, you know, let him do his little thing. And then we're going to have the groom come and push him out the way and take over.
Right. Perfect.
Boom. Yep. Now it's planned. Now it's part of it. Now I can control it.
Yeah.
Versus if she would have never told me and she already knew it's happened at the last 3 or 4 weddings she's been to. Now I'm caught off guard because this drunk dude is like, play this song, play this song, play this song. And I'm like, I don't know if I should play this or not. He's like, I do it at all the weddings. They know I'm going to like.
Yeah.
So you got to like talk to people and just communicate even the little things like that.
Plus, if she doesn't like it, you can make it shorter.
Right. And so that's why I want to control it.
A 10-minute awkward lap dance with you and your mom.
Exactly.
And this person your mom's never seen before.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I like that. That's cool.
So yeah, so you've got little things like that you can do. Excuse me. One of the things that I guess transitioning a little bit that I did want to cover in the Raleigh area, just because that's where we're at, this local to here, you are going to be in, and it surprises brides all the time. You're going to be looking at an $850 and up, depending on what you get. And it's different. It's different for states. Like which state is going to depend on like what you can expect to pay for a DJ. My cousin's in Arizona. He DJs and his prices are very different from the prices that we have here.
Right.
Your prices in New York are going to be different. Your prices in Atlanta are going to, like, it depends on where you're at. But for this area, you can pretty much expect, if you're dealing with any kind of professional, like even a beginner, you're not going to get anything less than $850 and that's going to be like a 3 to 4 hour basics. Right. For $850.
Like I'm showing up, setting up, and playing music.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's not that your DJ doesn't want to do a good job. It's not, that's just industry standard. That's where we start at. And the things that you want to look at in the same thing for your photographers and your videographers, the reason that their pricing is the way that their pricing is equipment cost, insurances, the schooling that they went to or the classes that they took, their certificates. It's not just your brother went to Best Buy and bought some speakers and now he's doing your wedding.
Right.
Which is cool. I've had people be like, oh, well, we just have a Spotify list and we're going to do. I don't personally like that. Yeah. But you know what? If you have a designated person who's going to pay attention to it, go for it.
Right.
But your cousin who took a photography class, she wants to talk to your grandma. She wants to talk to you. She's not going to be paying attention to photography.
Yeah, she wants to be involved with the event.
Your brother is going to play the music that he wants to hear, or his friends are there and he's trying to, like, he's not going to be paying attention and doing what you want him to do.
Right.
And so that's why I try to tell people, because I've had people do that before. They're like, okay, well, what can we do to make this cheaper? And I'm like, okay, I can give you some options of places that we can start, but then what you're looking at is you're looking at a value of quality. Mm-hmm. And so that's what you're doing. Do you want me to just rent you equipment? And in that case, I'm going to say, okay, it's $75 for a speaker, $85 for a sub, $150 for the turntable. I'll come out there and actually play the music for $100 an hour. Oh, you want lights? There's 10 lights. They're, $25 a lot. Like, we can chop everything up if you want to do that.
Right.
But then I'm just selling you equipment. That's not an experience. That's not that's not what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, maybe you went to audio school and that is what you're looking for.
Right.
And then that's cool. Like, go to a rental house and get all the stuff that you want. But usually people who that's not their profession, like, they're looking for a DJ, they're looking for somebody to run it. Like, you're paying for the quality of the equipment plus my experience, plus my knowledge of knowing what music is appropriate and not appropriate to play, plus being able to access and get all of that music, because I'm not just stealing all my music. Like, I'm part of record pools and I get remixes and I know how to manipulate the music. And even though, this song is a number one song right now, it's also about somebody who's breaking up and cheating and doing all this stuff. So, like, I don't want to play that at your wedding. Like,
yeah, not exactly a very romantic loving song. Right. So it's things to think about, but, and it's such a great point. I think that the budget conversation certainly scares couples, because especially with everything going on today, there's a lot of uncertainty. But with going back to that, this is your wedding, most likely a one-time deal for you, hopefully. And the DJ is pretty much the party aspect of it. And with the photographer, right? Like, you want to have those memories forever. You want to be able to look back and watch and look at the photos and see that everybody is having the time of their life. If you spend all this money on this phenomenal photographer, which you should, and then the DJ is terrible and everybody looks miserable in your photos, I think it's like the one time you have to splurge on a event in your life. Some people might have more times, but for most people, I'd say it's the one time that you actually have the time to justify spending a little bit more. And to your point, it's like, if we're talking about maybe saving $100 or $200, and I get all of you as a DJ, or we're just like chopping through a price list and you're coming there and just hitting play and walking out, like, I don't know if that's enough of a cost savings for the difference in service.
And to be fair, and I guess my point to all of this is, it is a conversation that needs to be had.
Absolutely.
Because I can't just make more money appear because I want you to have a bigger budget. Like, that's not my goal. That's not, like, it's not realistic. So, like, if like, hey, we're doing this on a budget, we only have X amount of dollars, then be upfront with that and say, hey, this is how much we have to spend. What can we do within this range?
Right.
And then I'm going to tell you about what I can do within that range. And then I'm also going to say, hey, here are the things that I think, now that we've had this conversation, these are some things that I think that you would also like. They put you outside of your range, but, like, maybe you want to take some budget from another portion and move it over here. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you want to say, I've had brides who are just like, oh, we have $500. And I've had, like, on the first phone call, and I've been like, okay, well, our prices start higher than that. what area are you looking in? And they'll say, okay, we're looking for this, this, and this. And I'll go, okay, cool. Here's an association or here's a group that I've worked with before. I know they have a lot of beginners or a lot of people who are just getting into the industry. They'd probably be able to help you out and find somebody who's a little bit more in your price range.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm not going to be mean, just be like, nobody's blah, blah, blah. Like, that doesn't do any good, but I'm also not going to drop my price like over half to like,
just to get a gig. Yeah.
Right.
And I think that that's why, and again, something that I'm hoping comes out of conversations like this is that vendors' prices are not going to change based on what you tell them what your budget is.
Right.
Their prices are what their prices are. It all depends on what you're getting for your budget. So if I say my budget is $1,000, you can offer me more than your base package. But, I think because in so many other industries, if you tell me my budget if I say my budget up front, then you not you, but the person that I'm speaking to that's selling me a product can now say, oh, okay, well, I can, kind of take advantage of that knowledge. Right. It's not like that in this industry. Nope. This industry is one of the very few where I don't care what your budget is, because I know that's not going to change.
Right.
The amount of money you have to spend is not changing.
Right.
The amount of money I'm charging for a service is not changing.
Right.
It's just what you're getting for that amount.
Right. Oh, you have a bigger budget? Let's talk about more stuff.
Exactly.
And if that stuff is awesome, let's do it. If it's not, then let's not do it.
Right. And I'm hoping that starts to resonate and that starts to become an easier conversation because, again, this is the only industry that I can think of that budget isn't being taken advantage of and manipulated. It's just, it's not changing for the vendors. I've never met any vendor of any category who has changed their price based off of a couple's budget. Right. They do what you say. They say, hey, listen, that's way below what I'm willing to do. I'm not going to undercut the true wedding professionals. It scares me when I see these Facebook groups and I see people saying that they will do things for $300 because I'm like, that's not real. Right. But the true wedding professionals have their price. They know what their service is worth, and your budget just is what can you get for that.
Absolutely.
So, well, Seth, you've said so much valuable knowledge about not only DJs, but weddings and just today's climate and what's happening in the world. So I greatly appreciate it. But I always like to ask people, if there was one piece of advice, whether it's for your fellow vendors or for your couples, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. Kind of caught me off guard with that one.
I love ending it that way.
Ooh. I think just be true to yourself. And I guess that goes across the board for both the vendors and for brides, especially with everything that's going on right now. Figure out what's important to you and do that.
Yeah.
Just love each other, value where you're at. On the vendor side of things, I really hope everybody makes it through. In terms of, some of us have had to make this our part-time job as opposed to our full-time job, but people are figuring it out. People are going digital. The podcast and the stuff that you guys are doing at Bride Genie, the bridal shows, figuring out how to go digital, that's been super cool. People figuring out how to social distance and still being able to have events or have functions go on. People have been getting married for years. They're not going to stop now. So
exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you, Seth. Spin DJ, check them out because they do a great job. I've heard you guys multiple times now. Yeah. So, well, thanks so much for coming out this afternoon. And I'm sure I'm sure I'll see you soon, hopefully when COVID is all over with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, all right. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
See, not so bad.
Yeah.